get any easier from here.
The Vikings Ventline is the show. Judd, Zulgad, Danny Cunningham, Manny Hill is producing. Declan Goff running the streams, at which you can find us Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. Vikings winning against Washington last night. We want your involvement, and that involvement can come through the phone lines at 651-646-8255. It can come via Twitter at Score North, at Real D Cunningham for Danny, or at J Zulgad for me. And again, 651-646-8255. What did you think of the Vikings win over Washington last night? We are, as always, in the TCL broadcast studios. And because it's the day after a game, we are on till noon until Score North Live comes on these airwaves. Score North on 1500. All right, Danny, let's start with this one. Thursday night game. You think to yourself, it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be great.
No.
But you know what? Efficiency. As a sports fan, I've grown to love efficiency.
Are you opening up with the fact that this game was 2 hours and 39 minutes?
I'm opening up with the fact it's a 10-point win, which is just fine. With the fact if this dragged on for 320, guess what? We're saying, boy, was that a long, boring game. It was an efficient game. I admire the Vikings for now with 10 days off before Kansas City. Playing last night, they get the win. They beat a bad team. It was certainly closer than the 16.5-point spread thought it would be. But that, my man, in fact, I called this on the Purple Podcast last night with Collar. I dubbed this a bridge win. This is a bridge win. This is a game that the Vikings, if they had been efficient in the red zone, they could have scored 35, 40 points.
Sure.
Easy. This Washington team's terrible. But guess what? I don't think you care. Because it's a bridge win. And this now gets you to 10 days off. It gets you to Kansas City. It gets you to the primetime Sunday night game in Dallas. Eventually, it gets you back here against a bad Denver team, which is fine. Then you get your bye, and then a Monday night game against the Seahawks in Seattle. So I think that this now sets you up for a 3 and 4 game span over 5 weeks in which we are really going to find out about this team.
I think you're right, Jed, and I think that a lot of Vikings fans should be excited about that. And I understand last night's win wasn't exactly the most exciting thing in the world when you have 8 different scoring drives in the game and 7 of them are field goals. It's not a very exciting game, so I understand that there might not be a ton of hoopla surrounding last night's game. But it was a good win. They took care of business. Now, they didn't win by the margin I thought they were going to. They didn't win by the margin that you thought they were going to. But taking care of business is all that matters. The final score doesn't mean any less, doesn't mean any more. So the Vikings took care of business, and really that's all that matters.
Viking Ventline, 651-646-8255. Kyle in Denver, Colorado. Hi, Kyle.
Hey, how's it going? I got 3 quick points.
Sure.
All right.
Go ahead.
First of all, I want to say the only thing worse than Pat Elflein has been those color rush uniforms. Just
Thank
awful.
you.
Oh my God, they're so bad. Second of all, when does Anthony Harris get some credit? We call him Big Game Tony here at Denver. He gets turnovers all the time. He's always top 5 in PFF grades, usually per game. And third, this is just fun. We've won 4 games in a row. The Vikings bar here in Denver has been standing room only. We've been waiting a long time for a run like this. I'm not saying we're going to win the Super Bowl, but let's just take some 10 days to enjoy this. It's been a really fun couple of games. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Kyle. All right, Cunningham, quickly, because the uniforms don't bother me. They don't bother Declan. Go ahead. You hate the uniforms.
Okay.
I just, as far as color rush went, which I thought was a miserable failure, those to me those don't touch the worst ones I saw.
I don't think they're the worst things I've ever seen, but that doesn't make them good. Like Rami tweeted at me last night when I tweeted about my displeasure with the uniforms that he's like, I've seen far worse on Thursday nights. I'm like, okay, yeah, so have I. I mean, we all watched the powder blue Tennessee game against the mustard gold Jacksonville game, and that travesty that took place once upon a time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there have been worse color rush games, but that doesn't mean these are good uniforms. I think that I would rather, for color rush for the Vikings, I would rather see the throwback uniforms. I think the throwback uniforms
not even
blow
close.
these away.
Purple.
I think that the regular uniforms are better than these. The absence of having white in the uniform hurts.
I agree with you.
I don't like these uniforms. I just don't think that they look really good. They look like fashion uniforms, like uniforms that are never meant to be worn on the field.
I miss that dark purple, don't you, Judd?
Oh, I loved them. In fact,
so great.
In 2009, I believe, during Favre's year, they wore them, 2 or 3 games at home, and those were fantastic.
Amazing uniforms.
But, Danny, I'm with you. The normal ones are better. I'm just not offended by them, and there were several that they did in the Color Rush Thursday night season where I said to myself, I can't believe that the league signed off on allowing a team to wear those. So that's my only point.
Sure, but that doesn't make
I would
these
wear my
good.
normal ones.
That doesn't make these ones good. Just because there are worse ones doesn't mean that these are good. That's the thing.
651-646-8255. We have now added, what did you think? In fact, you know what? Twitter poll question. Put that out there right now.
Okay.
Put that out there at Score North. Put out, are you offended by or did you hate the Vikings color rush jerseys that they wore? What now? Would it be, I think it was the game that Zimmer didn't coach 3 years ago or so against Dallas where they lost that game.
I will just put up on Score North.
Score North, okay.
Do you like the color rush uniforms?
All right. Among the reasons why I thought last night's game was interesting, and I'm not saying this in a good way, and heck, I'm not saying this in a bad way. Third quarter play call there. When you go for it on 4th and 1 from, I believe, your own 34-yard line, and Kirk Cousins gets stuffed, and it's 16-9, and ordinarily I would think that people would be saying, and they probably were at that moment, Mike Zimmer, Gary Kubiak, Kevin Stefanski, Kirk Cousins, what are you doing? You just got stuffed on 4th down in your own territory. Washington Hopkins had kicked a field goal, I think, on Washington's previous drive. And now with Washington having a chance to score a touchdown, you give them a short field. When that happened, though, did you ever, because I did not, did you ever think to yourself, oh boy, this is trouble? I thought, sort of weird call, interesting call. But if you were playing a lot of teams, you could say, or you could think, Danny, devastating call. On that call, I never thought Dwayne Haskins in Washington is going to go right down there and punch that ball in. That never really crossed my mind.
I actually liked the call to go for it. I would have handed the ball off to Dalvin Cook, I think, instead of running a quarterback sneak. But I didn't mind the call going for it deep in your own territory. I liked the guts that Mike Zimmer showed there. But when you turn the ball over to Washington, it's really a no-risk proposition, right?
And then Dwayne Haskins, and then Peterson runs for 4 yards, and Dwayne Haskins throws that ball high.
God,
Anthony Harris intercepts it, and that's it.
Yeah.
But it's funny because you almost could have predicted that. I think if you're playing a good quarterback, not even necessarily a good team, but I think if you're playing a competent quarterback, a veteran quarterback, I think you punt there, don't you?
Yep.
If Case were still in the game, do you think?
I think they punt.
Yeah.
Now, if that ball is at the Washington 34, I think they go for it. But if that ball is, but if that ball is at their own, that ball's at their
they
own
might kick
34.
A field goal if they're at Washington.
That's
34.
True. That's true. The point being is, I think if Case is still playing, then
they probably punt.
You just punt and say, "See you later. Too bad. Goodbye." But Haskins. That game
was such a bad throw. Oh my God.
When they announced in the press box that Keenum was in the concussion protocol to start the second half, and that Dwayne Haskins had come into that game, Danny. When they announced that, Collar turned to me instantly and said, "It's over."
It was.
And he was exactly right.
I mean, it was over before it really started, right?
The entire game?
Washington really had no chance to win this game.
I felt like the first half we were sort of skating around the edges of, oh boy, well, this is, and Washington did some, here's the weird thing. Washington's talent is awful. Their team is terrible. But they actually schematically, I especially thought on defense, had some decent ideas. I think Washington's game plan was defensively, and at least in the first half when they could execute it a little bit more, I thought that game plan was far superior to anything that Jim Schwartz and the Eagles arrived with now 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of weird because I never felt that the Vikings were going to lose that game, but I did think Washington looks, at least coaching-wise, competent at one point. But Dwayne Haskins came in, and you said, they've got no shot. This kid is going to be completely lost, and he was.
It seemed like Washington, it seemed like Bill Callahan really had them ready to play last night. But you just knew they weren't going to win because of just the discrepancy in talent.
Yeah. And the discrepancy in talent's huge. And then when Haskins came in, you said, they ain't doing a thing. And they didn't. But that's about as good a defensive game plan to start a game as I've seen against the Vikings in
You mean offensive game plan?
No, defensively, they did some nice things to start off with. Defensively, they did some things to Kirk that to start with.
I don't know that they really did things to Kirk, man. Kirk's only 3 incompletions were 2 drops by Dalvin Cook and a throwaway.
No, but if go back and watch that game, that line got some pressure. They were smart. Philadelphia, my point being is Jim Schwartz is an idiot. Jim Schwartz's game plan was idiotic. You watch that. No, when you can watch a game.
You just wanted to rip on Jim Schwartz.
No, when you can watch a game from the press box and say, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Okay. Offensively, here's the other thing. Offensively, Washington had some good ideas until they got deep in Vikings territory, and then explain to me what they were doing. They're going from shotgun at times. They're handing it to Peterson out of shotgun. Guys, listen, call me up. I saw Peterson from shotgun. He can't play.
He hates it.
But what are you doing? Like, where's your comments? This is as a football fan, and I know Vikings fans don't care. This is as a football fan where I become deeply offended. When you're so stupid that you don't know, you do anything out of shotgun with Adrian Peterson?
Dr. Football, man.
How stupid are you?
It's hard for me to be really offended because I just don't think they're good.
Well, they're not good.
Regardless
but give
of
yourself,
what they do,
but give yourself
they didn't have a chance.
But every team in the league, give yourself a chance by not being stupid. What has turned the Vikings around since the Giants game? You know what has turned them around offensively? Common sense.
Yeah.
The offense makes sense now. Think about this. Short of the tight ends not being used as much as we originally believed, since week 5, think about what the Vikings have done on offense. And then think about the fact that all of that goes back to exactly what, and it's not just us. I'm not saying that it's not Collar, it's not me, it's not you, it's not Manny, it's not Phil. I am saying this whole town, when Kubiak got that job, this is what we all expected. This is what we expected now.
Yeah.
Put Kirk in a position to succeed. Here's what they've done a great job of. They've done a great job, in my mind, these last 4 games now, of finding the balance between trying to make Kirk the focal point of the offense and making him a very important chip to it, but he's not the focal point consistently. And he's not. The stars of these, if you were to do a marquee of the offense right now, so if you were to say the Vikings and in 10 days, outside Arrowhead Stadium, big marquee, Kansas City versus, and you had to pick names. You would pick Dalvin Cook.
Yeah.
You would pick Stephon Diggs.
Mm-hmm.
You would pick, and I'm not trying
Thielen,
and I'm not trying to say that eventually you wouldn't pick Cousins, but Cousins would not be the marquee name. He would not be the
He's
first
not
name.
at the top of the list.
Right. And what have they done? They've done an outstanding job and a great job these last 4 games of realizing that. And instead of trying to force things, they have basically, because the thing with Kirk is, and he did this again last night, and he did it at Detroit on Sunday, the throws to Diggs, those deep shots to Diggs, those are really good throws. Those are super impressive throws. But the key to those throws is Stephon Diggs is so damn good, he can catch those throws.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the starting point here. So do I have a quarterback who can make the throw? Absolutely. But do I have a quarterback who can make that throw to BC Johnson at this point? Probably not. It's common sense. This has been 4 weeks of, it clicked. Now you get it.
Yeah.
And also to go back to what we talked about, probably starting in March, is this one. Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook is the guy that we said he can't get hurt. He has to play. And if he plays, he's not only really good as far as running the football, he'll drop some passes. And I know he dropped the one last night. He started to run. It's so textbook why he drops passes. But he'll drop some passes. But nonetheless, he can catch the ball and make plays there too.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had a marquee, if I were to say featuring the Vikings, the 2019 Vikings offense tonight, Danny, the 2 names that I would put right now at the top of that marquee are Dalvin Cook and Stephon Diggs. And I would say really, really important player, Kirk Cousins, but he's not the star of the show.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. And I think for the Vikings to be the most successful version of themselves, that's how they need to be. Kirk Cousins can't be the star of the show. He has to be the guy that's getting the stars the ball. And I understand because of Kirk Cousins' price tag, that doesn't necessarily sound right. But for them to reach their peak, that's what it needs to be. And that's what it's been over the last couple of weeks. Kirk Cousins has done a great job facilitating, and his numbers have reflected that. So that's why the Vikings offenses look so good. And that's why they've got stars elsewhere. Let them be stars. Kirk doesn't need to be the star despite being paid like one.
Mm-hmm. And that's where, and we talked about this a lot, especially when Kirk struggled. And throughout last year when Kirk started to struggle and DeFilippo was fired too, that's where you're balancing the fine line of Kirk's a good player. He's a really good player when utilized correctly. But are you going to find that balance there? And I felt like there were far too many times during the 2018 season where that didn't happen. And I felt that you were at times in those first 4 games on the precipice of finding it, but then you threw, was it 12 attempted passes against the Falcons?
10
attempted passes, and that's not nearly enough.
No.
And so you said, okay, you can't not rely on him. And I'm the guy who said Dalvin Cook is the star, but where's the balance? And they found it. And these 4 games, and what I love now is we're about to enter a 5-week stretch, and it's going to be 3 or 4 games where now we finally get to a point where we're going to get the answers.
Yep.
Yes.
We're going to get the answers because, you've just beat 4 teams. I'm not going to sell the Detroit win short.
You shouldn't. I think Detroit
I'm going to give them a lot of credit for that.
Yep.
I'm going to give them credit based on circumstances. The Eagles' secondary is terrible, but that was a nice win.
Mm-hmm.
But the Giants and Washington, you should win those games.
Yep.
But now starting in Kansas City, what you're going to do is you're going to embark on a stretch that features probably, I should say, Mahomes playing for the Chiefs. And that's going to be a very tough game on the road. A primetime game on Sunday night in Dallas, which is Kirk Cousins' kryptonite. I know he won in primetime last night, folks, but Washington.
It's different.
It's Washington. Denver here. That should be a win. Don't make that too exciting. The bye week, and then Cousins' real kryptonite on a Monday night game in Seattle, and Kirk Cousins career-wise, and I know it's a win-loss statistic, and there's a lot of people who will tell you that it shouldn't be attributed to a quarterback, but it has to be. 0-7.
Yeah.
So these next 3 of these next 4 games, we get answers to. All right, you've turned things around. You're 6-2. You're playing well. Who are you really? We'll find out.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
I had people tweeting at me last night about, well, Kirk played well in prime time. Well, yeah, he played well last night. He did what he was supposed to do. It was against a team that was a 1-6 dumpster fire that fired their coach 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And you tip your hat to Kirk and say, okay, yeah, good job, Kirk. You played well. Now we're going to find out the real answers. Phil said it last night on Ventline. Now there are boxes with Kirk Cousins that still need to be checked. And we're going to find out over the next few weeks.
The interesting thing about that, though, too, is beyond Kirk, it is now about, and this has become crystal clear, it's now about coaching, too. It's now about schematics and coaching. They've done these last 4 games, Stefanski and Kubiak, who, as far as I'm concerned now, are one guy. They've done a fantastic job of realizing either the error of their ways in the first 4 games in the 2-2 stretch, or the error of Mike's ways, and they got to Mike and said, Mike, we can't always run the football. I know you like to, but this is ridiculous. You pushed it too far. Yep. And for that, and I'm going to go back and give the same guy I gave credit to, and I don't care what people say, players don't control things, Stephon Diggs. It's not an accident. It's not an accident that guy said, see you later, you people are idiots. And by the way, watching Stephon Diggs, he's right.
Yeah.
To look at Stephon Diggs, the problem I think that they had was they looked at everything through the prism of Kirk. And again, that's the problem because, as Danny just said, he's been a marvelous, and this is not to denigrate him because people are going to think it is. He's been a marvelous distributor of the football and can make some really nice throws. But the problem was they looked at Stephon Diggs and said, well, he's attached to Kirk